Hello guys, this is Emma from MindMajix, and I welcome you all to this special session in which our trainer will explain everything you need to know about the Okta. In this video, let us look at the topics we will cover. We shall start with the understanding Okta users and groups and applications. Please check the caption to jump between the topics. If you are new to the MindMajix channel, please subscribe and press the bell icon to get quick updates about the new tech tutorials, free webinars, and career-enhancing shots from working professionals. Like and share the video with your friends and IT career aspirants. Without any further delay, let's start the video.
So basically, if I go to the Okta screen, right, and if I go and see on the left nav bar, we could see that there is an option called directory over here. And this is what we call as, the Okta's universal directory. So, talking about a little bit more on Okta's universal directory, the universal directory which delivers the rich user profiles and the fine-grained control over how attributes are exchanged between applications. This directory makes it easier for organizations to create and maintain a single source of truth for its users, enabling new authentication and provisioning scenarios. So basically, this universal directory is actually, deliver rich user profiles and the fine-grained control over how the attributes are being exchanged with different applications. So, as we have seen before that we are integrating our applications with Okta. Now, when we are integrating our applications with Okta, we are sending certain attribute values from our Okta to different application. And, we could see that, we were sending email attributes, or we could send different attribute values or different, user profile attributes values from Okta to different applications. Now, how are these values being sent? These values have to be stored somewhere, right? Like, okay, what is the value of user.email for my account? This value has to be stored somewhere, right? Or I as a user have many attributes, like, I have a manager, I have an email ID, I have a first name, last name, address, local, and country, city, state. All these attributes belong to my particular unique ID. Now these attribute values have to be stored somewhere, right? So this is all these attributes value are being stored in the universal directory of Okta, and that's why we say that they deliver rich user profiles, and which allows us to exchange attributes with different applications. It also makes it easier for the organization to create and maintain a single source of truth. Now, why do we say that? Because Okta is going to be your source, or the identity provider, which is eventually going to be integrated with a lot of different external directories. These directories could include other directories like your Active Directory, maybe your LDAP directory, maybe your third party directory, or it could be your application application users which are being pushed into or pulled into Okta. So basically, external directory users are pushed into Okta, and application users are being pulled into Okta. Now there's a simple difference. Why do we say that? Because if I talk about, like, Okta sits in middle. On the left hand side, you can think all the integration to the Active Directories take place, and on the right hand side, all the integrations to the application takes place. So integration to the application is like, the outstream process that happens from Okta to application, whereas the directory process is like, which happens from directory to Okta. So it's kind of, that's why we say that whenever the users are being pulled into Okta, that means that it's coming from application, and whenever the users are being pushed into Okta, that's where we say that the directory users are being imported or pushed into Okta. Now, what happens is, like, since the Okta is going to be integrated with multiple directories or applications, so basically the users of these directories or applications are going to be entered, or their accounts are going to be found inside Okta. So now, we are going to have multiple types of users. We are going to have directory users, we are going to have Okta users, the users which are created within Okta itself, and then we are going to have the application users, the users which are created in application, but on integration with Okta, those users are being pulled into Okta. So we are going to have different set of users, and basically what will happen is that eventually all of these users are going to sit within Okta, and that's why we can call Okta as the single source of truth, which will help us in all the authentication and provisioning scenarios. With Universal Directory, we'll have access to the profile editor in the admin console with the ability to store the rich profiles of user attributes in Okta. So what does this mean is like, under directory, you could see that, we have a profile editor tab. And now if I click and go on to this profile editor tab, you could see that, there are different applications which have been integrated with Okta. So basically you can, go to any of the application which we have already integrated with Okta. Why do we see all, so many applications when we haven't integrated? The reason being, if you go to the application tabs, we have got 4 active and 12 inactive. So that's the reason, like, why we see so many applications over here. Had we, like, if we delete all the deactivated applications or inactive applications, these applications will go away, or only the active, or the applications which have an instance in Okta will stay here. So basically all the applications which have been integrated till date and they are found in Okta, we can still see those applications over here. Also, it helps us to identify or understand, what type of an application it is, whether it's an identity provider, whether it's Okta itself, or whether, it's an application which is like a third-party application which we might have integrated either through SAML, OIDC, Secure Web, or any other API interface integration. So now you could see that, you have different applications. If you go to mappings, you have the ability to actually, control what attributes should be passed from one place to another, right? So like you can say that from this particular application to Okta, what are the attributes that should be flowing in, and then from Okta to the application, what should be the attributes that should be flowing in. So, we could save that mapping, and that's where all of this is done under Universal Directory. You can customize and extend the user and app profiles with custom attributes. So basically there are 2 types of profiles which we have. One is the user profile and the other is the app profile. So user profile is basically the profile of a user. So basically any user which is created in Okta, that will, that is eventually not only created in Okta, but has an account in Okta coming from, either from external directory or from, applications, or directly created in Okta, will have a user profile. So that profile of the user is going to contain many attributes. So so if you, in case you want to use any particular attribute, right, so like if you go to applications, and if I go to one of the application over here, so I was using, one of the attributes to be sent from, Okta to the application, and that attribute was email. And I was using this particular, expression language to, send the value of this attribute. So basically I'm using user dot. So whenever you use something like user dot, that's like, user being acting as the class, and, email being acting as your subject or as the object. So in that scenario, you say that it's a user profile. If in case I would have been using app dot something, then that means I'm using an app profile. So basically the user profile is also going to have certain attributes, or, the objects, and similar is the case with the app profile. They are also going to have certain attributes. The only difference is that user profile corresponds to your Okta environment, whereas app profile corresponds to the application which is integrated with your Okta environment. So, whatever attributes you have in Okta, you can use them using user dot something, and whatever attributes you have in application, you can use them with app dot something. So all of this, you can customize and extend it within the Universal Directory. You can also bidirectionally map and move the attributes from Okta to the applications. You can transform attributes using a powerful and intuitive expression language before storing them in Okta. So I mentioned before that, like for example, had I, like if it would have required for me to, send something which is not present in our Okta. So maybe, I need to send maybe something like first, maybe full name. And let's suppose I do not have this attribute full name in my Okta environment. So I can, make some customizations over here. Like full name is basically going to be your first name and last name, and I can just, save it. So basically, and even if I want some, space to be added, so I can do all of that over here. So, I can just save this expression, and basically once this expression is saved, so you see that, something like for my ID, it will send Vibhor space Garg as my, the first name and the, as the full name to the application. So basically, we can do all of these customizations using the Okta expression language, and all Okta expression language you can use within the Universal Directory. These capabilities enable you to do the following, and you can synchronize a user profile information across cloud HR systems, on-premise directory systems, and applications. You can provision application user accounts with rich profile information such as roles, managers, geolocations, and other attributes that aid in configuring complex authentications and authorization rules. You can collect, import, and store any type of user attribute, including externally defined custom attribute. So basically, that's like a very high level, or you could say a description of what your universal directory is all about. So, basically you can think universal directory, which helps to store the users, the groups which we have in Okta, the expression language, the mappings of the mappings of the users to different or various applications. All of these are going to be, contained within the universal directory, and hence this is very strong product of Okta, because with other IAM products, like, if I talk about Ping, so Ping has its own directory, but that's altogether a different product of Ping. Like, you cannot use Ping Federate and Ping directory in a single environment, right? You need to install Ping directory separately and Ping Federate separately. So, it requires an integration between these two products, then only you can use it. But with Okta, it's already integrated within the Okta Access Management product, which we see here on the cloud. And we can directly use it as and when required. We don't require any separate integration from our end. So that's the beauty of this universal directory of Okta. Now, if I talk about the users and groups which we have in Okta, the very first two tabs which you see here in Okta on the left nav bar, the people and the groups. So basically, you can manage users in groups or individually. Each one of our users, whether your workforce or your customer base, has a unique identity within Okta. So, like if I go to any user, it has a unique identity in Okta. And how do I identify that? So whenever you click on a user, right, just go to the top web address URL, and you'll see that there is an ID, which you might not understand, but this ID is there for Okta to understand. And every user is going to have a unique identity. So whenever your user is created in Okta, it's been associated with the ID which is being generated by Okta. And whenever we correspond or we reference to this particular user in Okta, Okta is always going to refer to with this particular user with this particular ID. So that's why, we say that, any user created in Okta has a unique identity. The identity lets you to view and manage which apps a device can user access. So, basically, if I clicked on it, so Okta knows this because, it knows this particular ID. Now, if I'm into this ID, I could see that, what all applications are assigned to this particular user, what all groups, are assigned to this particular user, what is the profile of this particular user. I could see that, what all attributes are populated, or if I need to make a change to this, the attributes of the profile, I can go ahead and do it. If in case this user has been, holding any special privileges like the admin privileges, so this user is actually a super administrator. So I could, go ahead and check whether, okay, what level of admin permissions it has. I can go ahead and, edit the admin permissions and stuff like that. So all of that can be done from, directly under people tab. This identity, in addition, Universal Directory stores unlimited amount of users and attributes from apps and sources like Active Directory or HR systems. Any type of attribute is supported, including linked objects and sensitive attributes and predefined lists. All of it is accessible by all apps in our OIN catalog over LDAP or through API. So our OIN catalog is nothing but the Okta integration network, which we are going to, discuss in detail. But like for the time being, you can think of it like, any application which is being integrated, that can either be integrated through your OIN catalog, that is your Okta integration network catalog, or it can be integrated, through like custom integration, whatever we have done, in our previous sessions. So now coming to how do we manage the users. So you could actually go to the people, and you can manage the users. You can go to the people and add and manage the end users in an organization. So basically, if you want to add a user, or if you want to change some property of a user, you just go to that user, and you can just edit the profile of that user. So all of that can be done from the people tab in Okta. Adding users to the organization enables them to have the own my applications page. Now add and update users with just-in-time provisioning in Okta. The very first time a user authenticates using AD delegated authentication, desktop single sign-on, or inbound SAML. So now there is an interesting concept of JIT. It's being often asked in interviews, so I'll just quickly discuss this topic here only. So basically, what happens is like there is a concept of JIT, which means like just-in-time provisioning. Now as the name suggests, right, it's pretty much self-explanatory. Like whenever it's required, the account or anything would be provisioned. Now it depends on what JIT is. What are we asking JIT to do? So it could be account provisioning, it could be user provisioning, it could be application provisioning. But mostly you will see that user provisioning. That's like whenever your JIT is enabled, that is a just-in-time provisioning. And if your application doesn't have an account yet, so let's suppose for a scenario that or your Okta is integrated with an Active Directory. Now a new user joins an organization. So the moment the new user joins an organization, the account is created in the Active Directory, right, for that particular organization. Like that's like basically the very first step every organization does. Like the moment the user gets onboarded, they create an account for the user in the Active Directory. Now, once the account in the Active Directory is created and your Active Directory is integrated with Okta, so basically what should happen is that that account has to flow into Okta now. So now there could be this won't happen immediately. Like the moment the account is created in Active Directory, it will flow in Okta. That will definitely not happen. So there are basically scheduled imports. So what happens is like account from AD to Okta happens. That synchronization happens, but like that synchronization happens at certain time during the day, maybe at 8 a.m. in the morning, then 12 a.m. in the morning, in 12 p.m. in the afternoon, 4 p.m. in the evening, maybe 8 p.m. in the evening, and then finally one last thing at 12 a.m. So that's something being decided by the organization. But like it doesn't mean that 24 hours you'll have every 1 minute or every 5 minutes you'll have a sync that will actually bring those IDs to Okta. Now let's suppose that an account was created at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. User has started his office today, and the account is created in Active Directory, but user required to access Okta. But the account is yet to be scheduled, or it will be flowing to Okta maybe at 12 p.m. or 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So what will employee do? Employee doesn't want to have the downtime of that 3 or 4 hours where he or she is not able to access the environment of Okta. So now if your JIT is enabled, because your Active Directory is being integrated with Okta, and let's suppose your JIT is enabled, that is just-in-time provisioning is enabled, then there could be a possibility that even if Okta does not have the account of that user, Okta would still allow that user to get into its environment by creating the account then and there at the time of login. So now let's suppose that if JIT is enabled, user is trying to access Okta at 9 a.m. in the morning, account is to be scheduled, or it will be flowing into Okta at 12 p.m. let's say. So at 9 a.m. the Okta does not have that account, but Okta is integrated with that Active Directory, which will bring that account into Okta at 12 p.m. So what will happen is if JIT is enabled, Okta is going to create an account then and there at the time when the user is trying to log in. So at 9 a.m. itself, the account will be created within Okta, and the user can directly log in. Now there are two ways the account can be logged in. I mean, the user can get into the system. So one of the ways that either Okta goes to Active Directory if delegation authentication is not allowed, saying that you only authenticate this user. If you find this, let me know, I'll allow this user, I'll create an account. Or Okta says that okay, give me the permissions, and I'll authenticate on your behalf. So like either that user has to be imported manually, then at that point of time, and only it will allow you to then create an account if it finds an account in Okta. If in case that import or user option is not there and delegation is available, then in that scenario Okta just goes to the Active Directory saying you only authenticate this user. So or once Active Directory authenticates and say yes, it's a legitimate user, the account is created within Okta. And that's what the JIT is all about. So it basically just eliminates your downtime of the application, and it could be with any application. Let's not just talk about Okta, let's talk about those applications which have business impacts if the users are not able to log in. So if JIT is enabled, it can help you increase, I mean, like reduce your downtime to a great extent. So now when JIT is enabled, users usually do not receive activation emails, And when using JIT provisioning with AD users, the procedure depends on whether delegated authentication is enabled or not. So delegation is basically, distributing your roles and responsibilities. That's it. So if you have delegate authentication enabled, you don't need to import users from AD first for JIT provisioning to create accounts. So that's what I mentioned. Like if your delegation is there, then Okta is going to go to Active Directory saying you only authenticate the user. But if you don't have delegate authentication, you need to import the AD accounts first, and then it must appear in Okta's imported users, and then only JIT will happen to, it will occur to create the account of that user in Okta. So, I mean, this second option basically doesn't serve a purpose, because, if in case we are importing users to Okta, then, what's the point? Like, that import was supposed to happen at 12 p.m. So if we are doing it now, like that doesn't make much sense. So it's better to, go ahead with the delegation authentication, and that's where JIT is really strong. And then, talking about people in Okta, so we are basically having the three types of people in Okta. So one is like the Okta mastered users, then you have directory mastered users, and then finally you have the application mastered users. So basically, the Okta mastered users are those users which are created in Okta. So they are being authenticated against the Okta policy. Then they are being associated with the Okta groups. They also provide an alternative login method separate from an external directory, and they are being governed by the Okta user profile. So when I say governed being by the Okta user profile, so there's a user profile being created in Okta for every user, and basically users which are created in Okta, they can be governed by the Okta. So I can go ahead and edit it. But had it been the case like this user would have been coming from LDAP, Active Directory, or any other third-party source, then Okta cannot go ahead and click on this edit and change the attributes. It has to be done from those applications or the directories from which the user is coming from. So that's what we mean by governed by the Okta user profile. Then if we talk about the directory, so these users are being created in the external directory, then they are being pulled into Okta. Then as I mentioned, that they are pulled into Okta, and application users are pushed into Okta. So there's a difference between these two terms. Then they are being authenticated against the external directory, and also they are being associated with Okta Groups. So any type of user which we have in Okta, they can be associated with Okta Groups. But if you have an AD group, you cannot associate an AD group to all the users. AD group can contain only AD users. Okta Group can contain all types of users. So basically sometimes this is a very important question being asked in the Okta certifications and all. So just remember that Okta Groups can hold any type of users, whereas AD Groups can hold 80 type of users. I mean only AD users. Application groups can hold only apps users. They cannot hold Okta users or LDAP users or AD users in their group. Then talking about the application, they are being, these users are being created within the app. They are pushed into Okta. They're being authenticated against Okta or the external directory, and finally they are being governed by the application user. So we have already discussed this thing. Like what do we mean by governance? So like for a directory, it has to be governed, or the attributes have to be modified or changed from the directory itself. Or for the application, it has to be also done from the application itself. Okta cannot go ahead and make a change over there. Then talking about the different user states or statuses what we have. So I'll just go back to Okta, and I'll just go back to people. So over here, whenever a user is created in Okta, you could see that we have got so many states here in Okta. So we just want to discuss that particular thing. So we have got total of 8 different states available in Okta, and also you could see this, you have staged, pending, active, password, lockout, it's suspended, and finally deactivated. So basically you have got these I think 7 or 8 different statuses or states what we have for the users in Okta. So then pending activation or provision is one of the state wherein the account has been created in Okta, but the user is not yet active. So it requires some kind of intervention or an action to be taken by the end user. So it's usually when we create an account, but that account, like something like this, that's pending user action, something needs to be done by the user. So basically reset the password or stuff like that, or create add your credentials, or I mean some personal details like your work email, or maybe a phone number or alternative email, something like that, and then only your account is finally created and it gets active. Then the staged is like, your account has been created, but it is not yet active. So, you could see certain staged users over here, and you could see that, right below that staged, staged um, value, you could see the activate also, because these users are created in Okta, but they are not yet activated. So we need to activate them, and then only, they can do anything in Okta. Then active users are the users, who are active, like who have completed all their process to be onboarded in Okta. So, they're working fine now. Then if we talk about the password reset is like, sometimes the user has to reset the password. Like for example, let's suppose that the user, there is a user or a service account which has been created by the admin, and now, there has been a temporary password being created by admin only. So now that user has to, change the password on the first login. So that's where it's a password reset mode. Like, that password which has been set by the admin, it's only like kind of valid for the first login, and the moment the user logs in for the first time, they have to change the password. So that's like a password reset. Logged out state is like, when the account has been logged out, so you cannot log into Okta now. Password expired is like, there is an organizational policy which says that, okay, your password would be expired within 60 days or 90 days or 30 days, whatever they, think about it. And eventually all the users who are going to be within the Okta are going to abide by that policy, whatever the organization has created. And if the, if for a particular user the policy says that the password is already expired, in that scenario the user has to change the password whenever they log in next. So that's what the password expired state is. Then we have a suspended state. So in this scenario, users cannot log into Okta and receive a message that they are indicating that they are suspended. It's blocked for apps that support SAML. So, basically in suspended state, it's more of like, you are using an inactive account, although it can be activated again. But like, you're temporarily inactive in an organization. That's where, your account gets suspended. Then deactivated is you have finally left the organization, or, you have completed your tenure with the organization. That's where your account is deactivated and then finally deleted. So that's what we have about peoples in Okta, people here in Okta. And next we can, talk about a little bit of groups, whatever we have in Okta. So basically, to access the network-based service, including email, file service, and business applications, every user must be authenticated, and managing user access individually is time-consuming and inefficient. So basically, it's trying to say that, whatever applications we are going to integrate in Okta, we need to assign users to those applications. Now, you can do it either giving manually permissions to those users to those applications, or you could create a group, add all the users together, and finally assign that group to the application. So, second method what I've just discussed, that's like the best method to go ahead with. It's more efficient when compared to the latter one which we discussed, like giving individual permissions. So that's why, group creation actually helps us to simplify our process, and, it helps us in time consuming, and it just increases our efficiency. Groups are important tools for identity and management systems, and group data typically resides in a directory. Most application supports group either at the application level or within the application to specific resources. Now again, over here, we'll see that, we have got, different types of group in Okta. So before we connect to Okta to the applications or other resources, we can create we can create groups in Okta, or, and, we have got one group that is everyone here in Okta. You could see that, if you go here and search for everyone. So whatever users are going to be on board to Okta or created an account in Okta, automatically all those users are going to be part of this everyone group. It's like a default group. You cannot go ahead and change or modify this group. Then you have AD groups. So like, any group coming from the application, that's like your AD group. Then you have LDAP groups. It's similar to what you have as the AD groups. And then you finally have the application groups. So like, they are pretty much similar to what we just discussed for the users. Like the only difference is they are users and now they are going to be groups. So, any group coming from Active Directory, they are your AD groups. Any group coming from your application, they are your app groups. Any group coming from your LDAP, that's your LDAP group. That's it. So, you're going to see different symbols for the groups being created in Okta. So, basically right now we just have all the Okta groups, we don't have anything else. So you just see only Okta group symbols over here. If in case you are going for an Active Directory, then in that scenario, you'll see something like this Windows symbol. If in case it's an application, you'll see something like an app symbol over there. So yeah, that's what the group in Okta is all about. If we talk about the group features, then you can only assign people to the Okta groups. So I've mentioned before, like same thing for Okta users. You can change their profile only for Okta users. You cannot do anything with the LDAP or AD or directly or application users. Same goes over here. You can only add people to Okta groups. You cannot add people to a directory, Active Directory, LDAP directory, or application group. If you need to add people, then they has to be done from that particular application where the group is created, and only Okta groups can be deleted. No other groups can be deleted within Okta. So talking about different groups, so you have an Okta group. It's on Okta is on cloud. So basically your browser or the client do an HTTPS to Okta. There are different groups being created for different teams, and finally these groups are being assigned to different applications, and then these users do SAML, secure web authentication, or OIDC to land into these applications using single sign-on. Then if we talk about directory groups, again you have a firewall over here. You again do an HTTPS to Okta, which is on cloud. Then there is an integration of Okta with Active Directory. So basically there is SSL, that is encryption, and secure socket layer or HTTPS, which actually helps you to send the groups from Active Directory to Okta using TLS security layer. And once these groups are there, AD groups are there in Okta, then again same process. You can log into any application using SAML, secure web, or OIDC, and you will be single sign on with the to these particular applications. Then same thing happens with the app groups. It's pretty much the same. Then we have already mentioned that the different types of groups are Okta groups, directory groups, and the application groups. So Okta groups are basically those groups which are created in Okta, and the membership is being managed within Okta. And directory groups are those which are created and membership is managed within the directory itself. Application groups are created and managed in the application. Now, the next point is the member of Okta groups can be Okta directory or application master users. Now, this is an important point to understand, that anyone in the any user, any type of a user can be added to the Okta group, but the membership of directory would be only those users which are coming from Active Directory or LDAP directory. Same goes for the application as well. Directory groups are copied into Okta. Same application groups are also copied into Okta. And if a directory instance is deactivated or deleted, the associated group no longer remains active in Okta, or it doesn't appear in Okta. And same thing happens for the application as well. So that's what we have regarding the people in groups here in Okta. And there are certain advanced features like going how do we add people, how do we add using CSV, or there are some practicals, how can we add people using APIs, how can we create groups, how can we do group based parts, how can we write group based rules and stuff like that, which is all covered in the Okta advanced training. So for the fundamental parts, we have understood like what are the different types of groups and different types of people in Okta and how do we manage them. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the session and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.